Everyone created by God has a unique purpose, but it might shock you to know that a vast majority of people on earth operate less than what God really created them to be. In fact, these people might never know it until the day they leave this world and meet with God. In this video, I will be revealing 7 signs that show you are wasting your life. So without wasting your time, let's get to it. Number 1, you have no clear sense of direction. One of the greatest assets that God has ever given to mankind is the asset of time. Just as there are different seasons to life, there are also stages in your life that you should never play with. If you have gotten to a certain stage and have still not discovered why you exist, it means you are wasting your life. Your life is divided into 4 major parts: a good morning, a good afternoon, a good evening, and a good night. Let's start with the first. Your good morning are your early years from around age 5 to 12. These are the early stages when you're still trying to figure out what life is all about. You are probably still young, excited, and exploring the gift of life. From there, you move into the second stage of your life, which is your good afternoon. These are your teenage or your youthful years. This is usually the stage where you begin to ask yourself questions, such as what your purpose on earth is, what you want to do with it, and where you're heading towards. This is a period where you have to put in a lot of work. Instead of wasting time on things that don't matter, you have to invest your youthful years into things that have value. Your good evening years, on the other hand, are the periods where your strength begins to diminish. By this time, you should already have settled down, owned houses, and are on a stable income. Your good night is the final stage of your life. This is when you can no longer do much with your life. It is the time meant for reaping and not meant for running around. This is why, in the book of John, chapter 9, verse 4, Jesus himself said, "I must work the works of him that sent me while it is day. The night cometh when no man can work." This simple verse tells us that Jesus was a man who worked with the consciousness of time. The greatest loss in a man's life is not the loss of things, but it is the loss of time. It is unfortunate that most people wake up in life when it is already night. They try to discover their purpose when it's already too late. You have to be mindful of how you spend your time, because time is extremely precious, and once it is gone, it cannot be recovered. Proverbs chapter 29 verse 18 says, "Where there is no vision, the people perish." The Hebrew word for vision here means revelation, dream, or prophecy. In other words, if you don't have a clear revelation from God about your purpose and destiny, you'll perish. You'll waste your life on things that don't matter and end up with a lot of regrets. Number 2, you're not learning from your mistakes. It is one thing to make a mistake, but it is another thing to never learn from them. One of the worst things that proves you are wasting your life is that you keep repeating the same mistakes over and over again, but often fail to learn from them. For example, let's say as a young woman, you were in a bad relationship with the wrong person and you got pregnant. That person walked away from your life and you were left taking care of that child alone. Not long after, another person came in and did the same thing. If you don't stop and review what you are doing wrong, you might find yourself still repeating the same mistake over and over again. The problem is not necessarily in the mistake itself. The problem is that you are choosing not to learn from your mistakes. This can put you through a cycle of repeated patterns. Or let's say as a man, you keep making bad investments, and even though you've fallen into that many times, you keep repeating the same thing. The golden rule is never to repeat the same error twice. The consequences you get from the first one is enough. If so, then you're not learning from your mistakes. You're wasting your life on a vicious cycle of folly. The book of Proverbs warns against this kind of act. Proverbs chapter 26 verse 11 says, "As a dog returneth to his vomit, so a fool returneth to his folly." If you keep going back to the same old patterns and mistakes over and over again, we're no better than someone returning to their vomits. Number 3, you live in perpetual idleness. Another clear sign that you might be wasting your life is if you find comfort in perpetual idleness. Life moves at a relentless pace and waits for no one. Many opportunities arise only when you step out of your comfort zone. If you are in your 20s or 30s and spend your time at home hoping for a miracle, it's likely that nothing will change. Often, God expects you to take the initiative and step out of your comfort zone. If you are in your 20s or 30s, but keep sitting home hoping that something miraculous will happen, that might never happen. In many cases, God will want you to come out of your comfort zone. In Matthew chapter 20, verses 6 to 7, Jesus spoke a parable and said, "About 5 in the afternoon he went out and found still others standing around. He asked them, 'Why have you been standing here all day idle?' And the men answered, 'Because no one has hired us.' He said to them, 'You also go and work in my vineyard.'" Notice that he asked them why they were idle. That means they were doing nothing. Meanwhile, there were lots of opportunities for them out there. This is exactly the same thing that happened to Jacob's sons. They were all grown-up men still living in their father's house, but even though there was no food, they didn't think to themselves to go out and do something. It was so bad to the extent that Jacob had to rebuke them. In Genesis 42, verses 1 to 2, the Bible says, "When Jacob learned that there was grain in Egypt, he said to his sons, 'Why do you just keep looking at each other? I have heard that there is grain in Egypt. Go down there and buy some for us, so that we may live and not die.'" Again, he rebuked his sons for sitting idle. You cannot simply wait idly, expecting God to change your circumstances. Taking a leap of faith and stepping out of your comfort zone is essential for progress and seizing the opportunities that lie ahead. Number 4. You're chasing the wrong things. Everyone's life journey is unique. Just because someone else finds success in a particular area does not mean you should follow the same path. Pursuing the wrong goals just to appear you've made it, or just to impress others, can leave you worse off than when you started. Stay humble in all you do. It is better to work hard and have more than you need than to go around boasting but hungry. The Apostle John warns us in his first epistle, chapter 2, verse 15, "Love not the world, neither the things that are in the world. If any man loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him." Here, the world refers to the ungodly value system of our present age, which opposes God and his ways. If we love and chase after worldly things more than we love and pursue God, we waste our lives on temporary, unsatisfying vanities. Number 5. You're not leaving a legacy. Let me ask you a simple question. If you were to leave this world today, what would people really say they remembered you for? What type of impact will they say you had in society? When you take a look around you, you will discover that many of the things you use daily were created by others. But when you take a look at yourself, what would you really say you did? The psalmist wrote in Psalm chapter 90, verse 12, "Teach us to number our days, that we may apply our hearts unto wisdom." Numbering our days means recognizing the value of our time on earth and making the most of it. If you're not thinking about the legacy you're leaving behind, then you're wasting the precious gift of life God has given you. You're building your house on the sand of this world instead of the rock of God's kingdom. Number 6. You're not using your gifts and talents. When you leave this world, you might be shocked to learn that God had given you numerous talents and gifts during your life. Deep down, you may recognize these gifts, yet you continually avoid using them. Many of the successful people you see around you, whether in your community or on television, are not necessarily more talented than you. They simply took the bold step to showcase the little they had. In contrast, you often find excuses for not using the gifts God has bestowed upon you. You might be waiting for the perfect time to use them, but it doesn't work that way. In the parable of the talents in Matthew chapter 25, Jesus tells the story of a man who entrusted his servants with different amounts of money before going on a journey. 2 of the servants invested their talents and doubled their value, but one servant buried his talent out of fear. When the master returned, He commended the 2 faithful servants but rebuked the one who had wasted his talent. The lesson here is clear. God has given each of us talents, and He expects us to use them for His glory. If we bury them or squander them on selfish pursuits, we will have to account for our actions one day. Number 7. You're not ready to meet God. The Apostle Paul wrote in 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 10, "For we must all appear before the judgment seat of Christ, that every one may receive the things done in his body, according to that he hath done, whether it be good or bad." One day we will all stand before Jesus and give an account of how we lived our lives and used the time, talents, and resources He entrusted to us. Those who were faithful stewards will receive eternal rewards, while those who wasted their lives will suffer loss. If you're not ready to meet God today, then you're wasting the most precious commodity you have, your eternal soul. You're gambling with the destiny of your life and risking everything for the fleeting pleasures of this world. Thank you for watching. If you love our video, please feel free to subscribe to our YouTube channel.